Hi. Today I am going to be talking about how we can achieve goals in lockdown. So, just to give you a real brief introduction to me, speaker, Danielle. My background is elite sport. I had a very exciting career as a Paralympic athlete. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm currently also the Alumni Officer for Young Enterprise. And I'm really, really proud to represent an organisation that does such great work with young people. It's been amazing to connect with some super talented, high achieving alumni already. And I'm really excited to be hosting our first alumni webinar as well. So I'm going to be sharing a bit about my story. I think that's really, really important because achieving goals, particularly through challenging periods, is something that I've invested a lot of time into researching and doing through all of these roles. So I want to share some of the stories and experiences around that. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer session. So there is a function on the webinar for you to type out your questions, so please feel free to do that as we go through and I will answer those at the end. So here we go, let's talk about goals. I set up my first business when I was 8 years old. My grandma is a keen gardener and she set up this little vegetable patch for me, and I used to grow vegetables and I sold what I grew to family and friends. And it was just such great fun, you know, watching all my hard work grow into extra pocket money. And it was a really big benefit to having a birthday in April because I'd always ask for seeds and tools, which proved to be a fantastic return on investment. So thinking back to this, did this mean that I was meant to have a career as an entrepreneur? Honestly, growing up, I didn't know what my future was going to look like. And I think that's because there's so much choice out there. All I really knew was that I wanted to be successful. And I wanted to find out what I could do to turn an ordinary person into something extraordinary. What I found though, as I grew up, was that there were so many external factors around me that narrowed this focus and showed me or taught me what they thought success was. And we are bombarded with this idea, what does success look like? The narrative that I found that was drilled into me was that success is about getting top exam marks. Good grades meant a good career, which meant financial success and stability. So success then was measured by how much money I earned. And I fell for it hook, line and sinker. I wanted the big house, I wanted the nice car, and I wanted the high-flying career that would pay for it all. And somewhere along the line, along doing this, I kind of forgot about this entrepreneurial streak that I had when I was 8 years old. In year 12, I signed up for Young Enterprise. I haven't actually managed to unearth any photos of me from that time rocking an impressively large hair. They're all up at my parents', so yay for lockdown on that. And what I thought at the time, I thought I'd do this because it would complement my business studies A level. And it was a fantastic experience, it really was. I was the MD of a greetings card company, so we made lots of birthday cards, Easter cards, Christmas cards, and I was voted MD, which did wonders for my confidence. My teenage years were quite tough in many ways. At 16 years old, I was diagnosed with a disability, complex regional pain syndrome. So this is a neurological condition that causes chronic pain in both my feet, and it fractured my self-esteem. But getting this opportunity to lead a team and seeing our hard work turn into a profit was a huge boost. But the thing I felt that I benefited most from was the showcase. I was so nervous having to deliver this presentation. Being forced out of my comfort zone and put onto centre stage was terrifying, but it was such an awesome learning curve, and I came away having absolutely loved the experience. We won our area showcase, which did come as a huge surprise. We were against some real tough competition, And at the county finals, we didn't go further than that, but we did win the environmental award. So it was just an awesome experience that did shape me in many ways, and particularly around that public speaking. Another area that really shaped my life was sport, and I consider this to have been one of my biggest teachers, particularly around things like goal setting. So I started archery on my 15th birthday because my disability stopped me from doing sports that I absolutely loved as a child. And I'll be using a few examples from sport throughout the presentation, so I thought I'd condense 8 years of competing into a super quick minute video. So here we go.
When it comes to my archery, I am very single-minded as to what I want. If you don't put the work in, you're not going to get the results of the competition.
What does it take to be the best in the world? I've asked myself that question thousands of times in my own quest to become a world record shattering, gold medal winning archery champion. You need to stop ruling yourself out of the game before you start playing. And you don't get to be the best in the world by accident.
So yeah, pretty cool career. I really enjoyed it. Let's talk about goals. Let's talk about goals. So one thing that I'm really keen that you remember is this message. To get the most out of you as a professional, you've got to get the most out of you as a person first. So in sport, I noticed the athletes around me tried to work harder or longer, or they tried to use tech to get better. I didn't. I took a different approach, and I invested in myself. So my theory was that if I could get the most out of me, and I got that bit right, then the rest would follow, and me as an athlete could shine. And I think that this applies to every profession. To get the most out of you as a career professional, as a student, as an entrepreneur, you first have to get the most out of yourself as a person. And this is a point that I want to keep returning to. And it's something that I feel is particularly important now in lockdown situation that we currently find ourselves in. So making sure that you are operating as well as you can, it will enable you to work on the areas to help you get your goals done. So, goal setting. Now, this really isn't the most glamorous part of the job, but it is one of the most important. Planning for performance can help us turn a big vision into a reality and increases our chance of succeeding and reduces the risk of failure. But confession time, I absolutely hated it. I might not be the quickest person in the world, but mention goal setting and I used to make a pretty swift exit. There was so many different models out there and I found them confusing, I found them contradictory. SMART goals, for example, that I think they're a model that we've all heard of, where we've got to make sure that our goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-framed. And this is a model that was drilled into me from school, but I found it so constraining. I found that achievable and realistic goals set you up for mediocrity, not for excellence. And I also felt that this didn't really help us when it came to adapting to the goalposts that are constantly changing. So it wasn't a particularly adaptable model. I knew that having a fuzzy idea of what I wanted to achieve in the back of my mind wasn't going to help me achieve. So I started to do my own research to see if I could find a model that worked better. Goals essentially are about encouraging us to change our behaviour. If we had the right habits and strategies already in place, we'd already be at our goal. So hitting a certain target might demand a massive increase in effort, where we pull out all the stops to deliver results. A common goal people go for, writing a book or a blog. This means dedicating time to writing and research on a regular basis. Now, if we already did that, we'd have already accomplished that goal. So what I found is that when goals fail, sometimes it's because things are out of our control, but quite often it's because we haven't 100% committed to the change in behaviour and executed the plan fully, or we don't have a proper plan in place to do that. So in order to make the right changes to my behaviour, I found it super helpful to run through this checklist. So the first one was taking a consistent approach. You wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to be super strong. This comes from working at it day in, day out. So consistently working on that behaviour. This helps us to deliver habits, but it's really, really important that those habits are positive. Now, one of my favourite quotes is, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Or put more simply, excellence is a habit. That's what we're trying to achieve. And turning it into a habit, into those positive behaviours that we do every day. So it's important that those, as I said, those habits are positive. We can have bad habits. That's going to lead to bad behaviours, bad results. So making sure that we're really, really positive with this. Taking action. Problems rarely solve themselves. We need to take responsibility for our actions. We need to act. We need to tackle challenges head on and take decisive action to get there. Navigating challenges is another really, really important thing to do, and I am going to cover this in a lot more depth because particularly at the moment, the situation we find ourselves in lockdown, we're having to navigate challenges every single day. So being able to do that, it really helps if you've got an adaptable plan. And this is where I found that goal setting models prior to me doing all this research, this is where I found that they really fell down. And I tend to reassess my goals on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. This allows me to stay on track and achieve that big picture goal. So every Sunday, I will run through my task list and I'll see whether any of my goals have changed, whether I need to take different actions, have additional things cropped up that I perhaps need to address. So having a really adaptable plan is really, really important. And through this, underpinning it all is that positive mindset and staying really positive. How we see things often determines how well we adapt to the challenges. So in challenging times, we can choose to see things as obstacles or as opportunities. And I find that looking at it as an opportunity, it allows you to make better choices in order to achieve success. So I had this checklist and I was going through this checklist and this really, really helped, but I still didn't have a structured model that would help me see and help me achieve everything that I wanted to. So I created my own. And by create, I didn't reinvent the wheel or anything. I begged, borrowed and stole the best parts of other practices, pulling together lots of performance strategies and building on established frameworks. I trialed them, I refined them, and for me, goal setting hinges on 5 really important questions. So the first one is who? Who am I and who do I want to become? And this really sets the intention. And I think this is a bit like a fountain. So our who is right at the top of the fountain, and when we get this right, when we understand what our who goal is, it starts to cascade down and it influences and impacts the other part of our goal setting process. So the why. Hear a lot about why, particularly Simon Sinek's done a lot of work around that, and it's really, really useful, particularly around communicating our goals, getting people to buy into you as a person, your products and your services. I think that is really, really important, and it motivates us. If we understand why we're pursuing a certain goal, that gives us the drive, the determination to actually get there. Our what do I want to achieve? Can you clearly define this? And to be fair, this is where that specific side of SMART goals come in. That is quite important there. So really understanding what you want to achieve. Number 4 is our where. So this is the platform. Where are you now? You need to know your starting point. If you don't know where you are, it's quite difficult to figure out where you want to go. And our how, this is the action that underpins everything. So these are the tasks that we need to complete, the behaviours that we need to change in order to achieve our what and our who. So, as I said, the idea is to start at the top, and we're going to spend a bit of time looking at the who. So, who am I? Who do I want to become? These are really fundamental questions when it comes to our identity-based habits. And I think that starting with the who rather than the what is really, really important, because this is the bit that encourages us to change our behaviour. And we see goals failing all the time, don't we? I mean, New Year's resolutions, they often last a month, if that, before crashing and burning. And that diet or exercise regime that always starts on Monday, yeah. It's a bit like snakes and ladders. It starts off really, really well, but a few moves later, you find yourself plummeting backwards. And this is because the what, so achieving a thing, isn't as motivating as becoming something. So when I look at me, I used to be the queen of starting a project and getting sidetracked with another brilliant idea. So lots of unfinished projects and not much to show for it later. I realised I had to find a better solution to ensuring that I consistently followed through. I focused on my identity to do this. So what I did was I decided that I was going to be a great finisher. And this instilled the idea in myself that this was who I was, and it worked. I stopped leaving projects half finished before I moved on to the next one. I started doing a really, really good job. And I think this is a really, really great way of doing things. So how do we do it? First of all, it's about starting with who and understanding who you are on a really fundamental level. We spend a lot of time getting to know other people in relationships, friendships, or business meetings, but we often don't spend the same time on ourselves. And getting to know yourself is really, really important. I think that self-awareness is the foundation of success. And we often see, don't we, in literature and film, they're obsessed with this concept of finding yourself. Fictional characters set off to look for it as if they've misplaced it or lost it somewhere. And we don't have to go on an epic pilgrimage to find out who we are. It's just about peeling back the layers and really understanding your identity, unraveling how you honestly see yourself, and breaking down all the different elements that make you you. So what contributes to the whole? Can you connect with yourself on a much deeper level, going beyond things like your name, your career, relationship status, activities and interests? So our next part, who do I want to become? This is about framing your goals not as what you want to achieve, but as who you want to be. Do you want to be somebody who delivers awesome results or gets stuff done on time? I've already said I wanted to become a great finisher. As an athlete, I wanted to be the best in the world. That's who I was. That's who I wanted to be. Right now, I want to be a deliverer of excellence, excellent results, excellent service, excellent connections. So who are you and who do you want to become? And I think if you really think about this and understand this and answer these questions, this can really, really help us get most out of us as a person, but then start dripping down into those goals. We've got the top of that fountain set out. We can then look at our why, we can look at our what, we can look at the where, and we can look at the how. I also think it's really, really important to remember this, that even small steps take us forward. When we achieve something, or when we look at success, we often think about this in terms of big successes, the big wins, but it's really important to celebrate the little wins as well. And particularly at the moment where we might not have access to all the resources and support that we used to, It might feel that we're not moving quite as fast as we normally did, and that's okay. As long as we're heading in the right direction, as long as we're consistently taking action, as long as we're continuing to pursue our goal, we should be recognising this and we should be celebrating it. So I think that's really, really important to do. And I think I sit down at the end of every day and I do write down 3 wins. I'm not looking for huge wins. I'm looking for the tiny improvements, progress. If I've had a compliment or I've achieved something that I've been really struggling with, I'll write that down, and I find that it helps me with my confidence, but it also keeps that motivation going, which can be quite tough at the moment. I did say I would come back to navigating challenges, and the problem with plans is that plans don't go to plan. Challenges come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, from micro complications to monumentally life-changing catastrophes. As we started this year, none of us could have foreseen the impact that COVID-19 would have had on the world or on our individual situations. It's thrown us wildly off course, and it has plunged the world into a realm of uncertainty and instability. We don't quite know what's going on, and we don't know what the world's going to look like when we come out of this. But life isn't about trying to avoid setbacks, it's about responding to them when they happen. How quickly we can do this often determines our success rate. And I want to share with you one of the biggest challenges I faced: the end of my sports career. I didn't choose to retire from sport. The decision was completely taken out of my hands, and it was a rule change that stopped me from being eligible for Paralympic sport. So every Paralympic athlete is classified to determine whether their disability is severe enough to impact their competing abilities. And I'd always pass this. It's always a very bittersweet moment. You know, I didn't quite realise I was that bad, but it has opened the doors. I can go to the Paralympics. I'd always pass with flying colours. After London 2012, they decided to change the rules and clarify the classification process. But under the new rules, they decided that my disability was no longer eligible. And that was it. Overnight, I lost everything. This was the single most difficult experience of my life. You know, I put everything into my sport, and being told that, I thought they made a big mistake. I thought that it had taken doctors 5 years to give me a diagnosis for my condition. I thought that the classifiers didn't quite understand it. I went through all the process of grief. I was denying it to start with. I protested the decision. I thought, they don't understand, I'll get more medical evidence. And I failed my protest, I failed my appeal. And it was so tough. It felt like I'd been dumped in the middle of an ocean. I was trying to paddle my way to shore, and I couldn't see which direction I was supposed to be heading. And it was really a complete identity crisis. So figuring out that who am I? I didn't know. I didn't know who I was away from the bows and the arrows. And that was really, really hard. But I see this as a crucible moment because I came out the other side much stronger. And I often find that when things go wrong, actually, we can learn far more about ourselves than we can when everything goes really well. So what did I learn from this experience? I learned that I got a really strong support team. So there's a picture there of my wonderful family, and they were absolutely amazing. And I remember when I went to protest the decision, so my mum came with me, we went to have another retest, and on the way back, got back home, and there was 2 bunches of flowers waiting for me, and they were from my dad. And my mum and I just burst out laughing, because my dad has never bought her flowers in his life. So we're like, wow, this must be a really bad situation. But having their support, you know, they were there. And when I said that I wanted to set up a business, on the back of it, they were there supporting me. It was just really fantastic to have their encouragement and their positivity when I was really struggling to be positive. This was also an opportunity for me to rethink my purpose. So my purpose had been tied up in sport. I wanted to be the best in the world. I wanted to win all those medals. That was my purpose. Now I had to find a new one, and I had to find out what I was passionate about and really get to know who I was away from the bows and the arrows. And that was really huge, actually. And I realised that I'm really passionate about helping people, really passionate about working with people. That's what I love doing. And I found that actually more rewarding in many ways. And particularly, I do have a huge passion for working with young people. You know, so many people helped me get to where I did, and I really love being able to put something back. And the last one was actually my ability to adapt and find another way around. This was an awesome opportunity, and I was able to do that. It was really hard going, and there was a lot of emotional baggage and turbulence that went with it, but actually I got through that, and my ability to navigate those waters, actually that was a huge strength, and that was something I could bring forward. So resilience is a word that we hear a lot of, and particularly at the moment as well. And I think that the situation that we find ourselves now, you know, I'm in uncharted waters just like everybody else, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming at times. But I know that I've got the tools, the resources, the willpower to deal with it. And if I don't, my support team does. So resilience isn't an ability that we're born with, but it's something that we can learn and nurture. And I think it's really important to point out that being resilient doesn't mean that we don't experience emotional distress. We still feel stressed. We still can get a little bit anxious and nervous and experience those negative emotions that often accompany adversity. But what resilient people have done is that they've developed the mental strength to pick themselves up and keep going in spite of it all. It is okay to be affected by it. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay for it to feel tough. It's just that once we've got those negative emotions, it's about looking at those, living those, and then looking at the action to help us move forward. So why am I talking about adversity? Why am I sharing my story? The thing is, we've all faced adversity. We've all experienced challenges, and adversity comes, as I said, challenges, adversity comes in different shapes and sizes. We've all experienced it. We will all continue to experience it. And what I really want you to do is to look back on the adversities that you faced in your life and in the past to see how you can apply the lessons you've learned to the current situation. So 3 questions here. Challenge. What challenge did you face? How did you adapt? So when you experienced that challenge, what did you do to adapt to that situation? And I think it's great doing this because in this situation, we've actually got the benefit of hindsight that whilst we're in the moment, we don't have. So we can look back at it and go, well, I adapted in this way, but actually I could have done it slightly better if I'd done this. So we're still learning, even though we didn't necessarily do everything right the first time. And we can apply it to the current circumstance that we find ourselves in now. So going back to my crucible moment, what did I learn that's really helping me now? Well, the first thing is to expect things to get better. I think that when we go through tough times, it can be really easy to hone in on the negatives. That's how the brain is wired. What we need to do is move away from that, shift away from that, expect things to get better. Second thing was about embracing change. Change can be scary, it's all about uncertainty, but embracing that change, running with the chaos is really important. Rather than seeing it as a negative, look at the actions that we can take to move it forward. So those were the 3 things that I learned from my crucible moment, and I'm finding are really helping me now. I am expecting things to get better. I know we will get out of the situation that we are in at the minute. Embracing change, that's what I'm doing. I think the world has changed so much, and I think that the world is embracing it as well. You know, we're seeing new technology, I mean, doing things like this, webinars like this, we are embracing change, we are taking action. And that action, as I said, is so important. It's the little things that we work towards that can help us progress. Another one of my all-time favourite quotes, and I don't know who said this, but yeah, it always makes me laugh. The only people who like change are babies in wet nappies. And I think it's so true. People can be quite resistant to change. They can find it quite tough because there's so much uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty. That gets us out of our comfort zone, and we don't always know how to react in the right way. And there are always so many options in front of us. Are we making the right decisions? So people don't like change. But a tool that I found, again from sport, that really, really helps us deal with change is the theory of marginal gains. So we talk a lot about this in sport. And the idea is really, really simple. What we do is we break down a really big goal into small parts. And we look at making tiny improvements in lots and lots of different areas. And these tiny, tiny improvements have big success rates. So if we look at the graph here, we can see we've got performance on one side and time. So what happens is when we start working on all our tiny improvements, not much happens to start with, but all of a sudden you get a big leap forwards. The same happens the other way. If you let lots of things slide, you fall downhill pretty quickly as well. But what we want to do is look at the positive. We're looking at developing those positive habits. So looking at all the different areas we can work on in order to achieve. And I think in many ways, this really helps us to manage change, because change, as I said, can be quite big, can be quite scary, it can be quite uncertain. But by breaking things down into small parts, looking at tiny incremental improvements, we're not focusing on big changes, we're focusing on really little small steps. To explain this further, and please don't worry if you can't read everything on this slide, I just wanted to show you how it works in practice. So we've got our goal on the top, and what we do is we break that goal down into its component parts. Now, I've just put down 5 generic headings. In reality, a goal is probably going to have more than 5, but these 5 apply, I believe, to all goals. So well-being, personal development, skill set, support team, and performance. So if we take well-being, we split that down even further. We split that down into physical, mental, and social. We take one of those. If we take physical, what actions can we do to improve our physical? Lots and lots of different things. So at the minute, making sure we're washing our hands, that's actually really, really important in terms of our physical well-being, our health. Making sure we're eating the right things, having a routine, so we're getting enough sleep, we're making sure we're drinking enough and hydrating ourselves, we're getting our exercise in. So as we can see, there's lots of different goals that fall under that physical. And if you work on tiny things in each of those areas, whether it's making sure that you're having a healthy breakfast to start the day, it's a great goal, great thing to work on. That's adding to your marginal gains. And if you make sure you're washing your hands, if you're going out for your daily walk, we're doing things that's all contributing towards that success. So that's how marginal gains work. And I feel that it's really, really helpful, particularly at the minute. One thing that I always ask myself, and I ask myself this question every single morning, is how can I make today better than yesterday? And every morning when I get up, I'll ask myself this question. I think it's a really, really great way to start the day, to frame the day, but it's also really, really helpful in terms of those marginal gains, because this is looking at small things. You know, it's looking about the tiny things that I could do slightly better than I did before. So this is pushing me forwards, and I'm taking those small steps that are helping me achieve my goal. The last thing, and the thing I really want to finish the session on, is a piece of advice that my coach gave to me. We never succeed or fail on our own. And I feel this is completely true, even if we're working towards an individual goal. We need people around us to help us get there. Words of encouragement, advice or guidance, expertise in areas that we're not authorities in, even a nice cup of tea. You know, at times like these, tapping into that support network is more important than ever. And working with the contacts we've got, trying to fill any gaps that might be there, is so important and integral to your goals and getting things done. And I really want to take this opportunity to remind you and remind everybody that the YEA is here to support our alumni from the Young Enterprise Programme. So if you want any help, advice or support, please reach out to us. The email address is on the next slide. So here we go. So thank you very much. So we've got our email address, alumni@y-e.org.uk. I will take questions now, so if anybody has any questions, general or anything about the goal setting models we've covered, you'd like to know a little bit more, please feel free to ask them. Whilst we're doing it, can I please highlight our feedback form that we've got? So it's this link. I'll add it again in the question and answer session, but if you could just click on that and fill it out, that would be super helpful. Seeing the questions. What's my biggest motivation? Right, great question. I think understanding our motivations are really important. So I'm motivated by competition massively and hugely competitive at everything I do. So when we're not in lockdown, I do like to go swimming, and nobody knows it, but when I'm swimming along, I'm always competing against people. I get so excited when I manage to beat the old man in the next lane. But yeah, I'm fiercely competitive, so I will always set myself competitive goals, whether it's finishing an amount of work in a certain time. I think that really helps focus my attention. I'm also motivated by results, so I like doing a really good job and getting that result done. That really helps me. So setting a goal that way and styling it that way is very important. I am motivated by helping people. You know, it just feels really great when I do that. So got a question from Fraser. What's the most important lesson you learned from your time taking part in company programs that still sticks with you today? Do you know what? I think it has to be fake it until you make it. And that is a principle that I have lived by pretty much my whole life. My sporting career was built on that. I was so nervous going in to do that showcase and deliver and present. I was shaking. I was a bit worried that I was going to fluff my lines and stuff it all up. And I had this huge adrenaline rush. And actually going out there and getting out of my comfort zone and realizing actually the world wasn't going to stop spinning, and just going out there and pretending to be really confident really helped. And that's something that I employ a lot of the time. So in sport, when I was in competition, I would completely fake my confidence. And even now, doing things where I am outside my comfort zone, I'll still think, right, I've got to deliver, I've got to get stuff done. I'm just going to fake it till I make it. And my confidence through doing that does grow. What else is coming up for YE alumni in the future to take part in? Another great question. So we are looking at putting on more events like this, and we'd love alumni to take part. We want to hear about their experiences. We want to hear about their stories, their journey, how YE really helped them, and also to give their advice to other people. Because I think everybody has so much to give. We can learn something from everybody. So whilst we're in lockdown, I think putting things online and being able to really learn from these experiences, I think is really important. But moving forwards, we want to provide a lot of advice and support for our alumni. We want to provide career resources to help people with their ongoing journey. We want to help them find volunteering opportunities and support them in lots of different ways that way. But yeah, it's been really, really fun doing this. What could one do against the point that external motivators such as money destroy internal motivation? I suppose money, for some people, is a huge motivation, and I don't know whether that's right or wrong. We're all different. For some people, it really does motivate them, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it is wrong. I think, I guess really it is about understanding your motivations and really digging down into it. And I think if people say that money is a motivator, it would be really interesting to look at that and go, why? What is it about money? Are they looking for the security? Do they measure that in terms of success? Because I think when we're looking at society, money is prized. Its success is painted as very, I suppose, commercial in many ways. So I guess bringing yourself back down and actually looking at you and that identity, who you are, your value base, is money featuring in that? So really, I guess values and looking at who you are would help there. So I think, I think if that's it, shall we say good night? I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for attending. And yeah, goodbye.